Good morning, and welcome to Redeemer Lutheran Church in Columbia, South Carolina, where we're part of the ELCA. I'm Pastor Gary Lodeholt. One evening, just before the great Broadway musical star Mary Martin was to go on stage in South Pacific, a note was handed to her. It was from Oscar Hammerstein, who at that moment was on his deathbed. The short note simply said, "Dear Mary, a bell's not a bell till you ring it. A song's not a song till you sing it. Love in your heart is not put there to stay. Love isn't love till you give it away." Her performance that night brought many to tears, and when she was asked about it, she showed the note and said, "Tonight I gave my love away." Love in your heart is not put there to stay. Love isn't love till you give it away. I think St. Paul would agree. This week, while St. Paul wrote a great many important things, I think many times we get so caught up in his many deep, complex theological concerns that we overlook or neglect the many important and profound things Paul said about God's love and our love for one another. Our goal this week is to look at some of those passages anew and to explore together what they mean for us. I think we'll find that Paul invites us to give our love away. Today we turn to 1 Corinthians 8, verses 1 through 13, and bear with me through this reading. I promise things will be clear eventually. St. Paul writes, "Now concerning food sacrificed to idols, we know that all of us possess knowledge. Knowledge puffs up, but love builds up. Anyone who claims to know something does not yet have the necessary knowledge, but anyone who loves God is known by him. Hence, as to the eating of food offered to idols, we know that no idol in the world really exists, and that there is no God but one. Indeed, even though there may be so-called gods in heaven or on earth, as in fact there are many gods and many lords, yet for us there is one God, the Father, from whom are all things and for whom we exist, and one Lord, Jesus Christ, through whom are all things and through whom we exist. It is not everyone, however, who has this knowledge. Since some have become so accustomed to idols until now, they still think of the food they eat as food offered to an idol, and their conscience, being weak, is defiled. Food will not bring us close to God. We are no worse off if we do not eat, and no better off if we do. But take care that this liberty of yours does not somehow become a stumbling block to the weak. For if others see you, who possess knowledge, eating in the temple of an idol, might they not, since their conscience is weak, be encouraged to the point of eating food sacrificed to idols? So by your knowledge, the weak brother or sister for whom Christ died is destroyed. But when you thus sin against brothers and sisters and wound their conscience when it is weak, you sin against Christ. Therefore, if food is a cause of their failing, I will never again eat meat, so that I may not cause one of them to fall." Now, perhaps to help you understand what Paul is talking about, I need to give you a little background. The first thing to know is that the Jewish people then had all sorts of rules for the food they ate. It had to be only certain kinds of foods, and it had to be prepared the right way. Some of those rules exist even today, and some Jews keep kosher by following them. One of the most significant rules was that in order to follow the first commandment about having no other gods, Jews refused to eat meat that had been sacrificed to idols. What happened in the Roman and Greek world was that meat would be burned and sacrificed to the idols. And then from the Roman viewpoint, here you had this nice cooked meat at the end, and there was no need for it to go to waste, so they ate it. The church in Corinth was made up of Gentiles who had become Christians and Jews who had become Christians. And when their Roman friends invited them over to enjoy meat that had been sacrificed to idols, conflict arose over what they should do. Christians who came from a Gentile background didn't see a problem. Christians who had first been Jews did. So, Paul needed to address the issue. Rather than treat this whole thing as an issue of theology, Paul addressed it as an issue of love. Paul himself understands that those old dietary laws are no longer binding on Christians, and that a Christian is free from such restrictions. However, he admitted knowing that doesn't mean much. You can claim enlightened theology, but that's only to puff yourself up. More importantly, Paul advises that Christian freedom must be guided by love. The right thing to do is what builds up and supports your neighbor. So, in practical terms, what he's saying is that if there are Christians among you, for example, Christian brothers and sisters who were from a Jewish background and who would be offended and have their faith scandalized if they see you eating meat that had been sacrificed to idols, then the loving thing to do is not to eat that meat. Yes, in Christian freedom you can do it, but in love for your fellow Christian you shouldn't. Paul urges us to lay down our own rights for the sake of others. It is love for your neighbor that guides your actions. True love seeks the good of others, not self-indulgence. Paul calls believers to a love that builds up rather than tears down. In all things, we are urged to live out love, doing what is good for our neighbor, no matter what. No matter if it costs us something. No matter if it's not what we want to do. No matter what, we are called to act in love. I saw another little story that may speak to this. Some children were asked, "What is love?" One little girl answered, "Love is when your mommy reads you a bedtime story. True love is when she doesn't skip any pages." A rushed mother may not want to take the time to read the whole story, but in love she does. It's a simple illustration, but we can apply it to our lives easily. We are to act in love for our neighbor, always. Give your love away, and don't skip any pages. Thanks for sharing these moments with me, and remember to let this day belong to God.